with family. They love the family, they love the movies.
Hello and welcome to Film with Family. I'm Austin,
And I'm Zach.
and we are two cousins who like to talk about movies. And this week, we are talking about the 59th annual Chicago International Film Festival. We were so lucky to get press credentials for this festival. And, well, I guess I should say I was so lucky to get press credentials. Unfortunately, Zach wasn't able to join me on this excursion through cinema.
Well, it was in Chicago, so it's tricky for me, but I'm glad you got to go and have a great time as the representative of Film with Family.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. Just want to thank everybody at CIFF. We're able to make this happen. It was such a great time. It was October 11th through the 22nd, but I was able to start seeing movies on the 9th at press screeners. And even before that, they started sending me screener links so I could watch stuff at home. And it was just lovely to see all these new films from all over the world. The Chicago International Film Festival, as I said, it's on its 59th year. Actually, I just found out that Scorsese debuted his first feature, Boxcar Bertha, at the Chicago International Film Festival.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. And we might just be talking about Scorsese in a future episode. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm curious, how did this come about? This you just got this wild hair up your butt to be like, I'm gonna see if I can get credentials to the film festival.
Well, when the announcement came out that the film festival was happening, and I saw that they were going to be doing Poor Things, that they were going to be showing The Boy and the Heron, The People's Joker, a bunch of films that I've been super excited to see and getting kind of an advanced look at it, I was very eager just to buy tickets. So I was sort of plotting out all the movies that I wanted to see and how I would buy the tickets because the tickets sell out very fast. And as I was doing my research, I just saw a little tab that said press and submit your press credentials. And I looked at the form and basically it's just like, show us your work. So I was like, we do movie review podcasts. That's the press.
Yeah, we covered new movies.
We cover new movies. And so I submitted a few links to our podcast and put in my name. You know, if I would have known that this would have worked out, I definitely would have encouraged you to do it too. But like you said, you're in Detroit, so it's tough anyways.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, definitely next year. Yeah, and they accepted me to my great surprise. So I got to see over 20 feature films,
Whoa.
both in the theater and at home.
That's crazy. It's a lot of movies
Yeah.
in the span of like 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, in about 2 weeks. Should I just list off every single movie that I saw? We won't talk in detail about every one, but I'm just going to say all the movies that I saw.
In the order that you saw them,
Oh, I guess I could. I could do it that way.
if you logged them on Letterboxd, you could.
I sure did. First movie I saw was All Happy Families, which we will be talking to the director later on in this episode. We got to sit down with Haroula Rose, the director of All Happy Families, and it was a lovely chat. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, very cool that we got to do that. Definitely stay tuned for that.
So I saw that on September 28th, and then now I'm just going to list them off. So Alien Island, a documentary from Chile. Terrestrial Verses, a narrative film from Iran. Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World, Romanian film. We Grown Now, which is a new film by a Chicago director who actually lives in Rogers Park. I just found out,
Nice.
which is where I live. Carnal Sins, Eric LaRue. Eric LaRue is Michael Shannon's directorial debut.
The actor Michael Shannon.
Yes. And I actually got to see him give a talk about directing, which was really cool. Then I saw Silver Dollar Road, documentary about land rights. Then I saw Poor Things. Wow, what a film. Yorgos Lanthimos, incredible. I got a lot to say about that, but you tell me how much I can say, Zach. You're going to be the governor on this one because I know you want to see a lot of these movies, and I'm going to try my best to not spoil anything for you or our audience because a lot of these movies aren't coming out for a few months. So,
All right.
Departing Seniors, another Chicago-based horror film. All of Us Strangers. It's going to be a major feature coming out soon. Really loved that one. The People's Joker by Vera Drew, which I thought was amazing. I have been dying to see this movie since she announced that she was doing it in 2020. I think I even maybe threw her a few bucks on a Kickstarter or something. She edits Tim and Eric content and has a very unique style, and I was really happy to see that. The Boy and the Heron, saw that with Drew, and we will play an interview that I did with Drew shortly after we saw that movie. Miyazaki's new film, very exciting. After Work is a really cool documentary that I really really liked. Bike Vessel, another documentary about a father and son biking from St. Louis to Chicago. Late Night with the Devil. This was a really cool
Is
movie.
the devil in it?
The devil is in it, but it stars David Desmalchin, who was at the screening. He plays a late night host who is kind of a 70s late night host who's trying to rekindle excitement for his show, and he does it by summoning the devil.
Nice.
Very cool. Family Portrait, which you and I were lucky enough to watch together through happenstance, and we also were able to interview the director,
Lucy Kerr.
Lucy Kerr. So we will also be playing that interview for you later on in the episode. La Chimera. So that is kind of a clownish Italian film about archaeologists. Then I saw this movie was a part of the festival, but I didn't get a chance to see it during the festival. But Music Box was doing a free screening of it. Is Anatomy of a Fall, which I have thoughts about. And then I saw some short features. They had like an After Dark shorts series. And yeah, so I got to see so many great things.
I'm curious. You name dropped Michael Shannon. Were there any other celebrities that you saw walking around, or was it not that kind of thing?
Well, like I said, I saw David Dismalchin, who you may recognize from he was actually in Oppenheimer.
Oh,
He was in The Dark Knight, he's in Dune, Blade Runner 2045. He's in a lot of stuff. You definitely recognize his face.
yeah, I like this guy. He's an interesting actor.
Yeah. And he does great in this movie, Late Night with the Devil. It was I guess we might as well just start there. Late Night with the Devil was, like I said, really cool, sort of like set in the 70s, and is sort of framed like this found footage horror film, like where it starts off with like kind of documentary footage about like who this guy was. David Desmalchian plays this guy, Jack Delroy. And he's like a Johnny Carson type. And, his late night show, was soaring in the ratings, and now it's, fledgling, and he's doing whatever he can to kind of stay on the air. And so he decides to do this Halloween episode with like a psychic and this girl who says that she's possessed by the devil, and a guy who basically debunks people who say that they're possessed or that they're psychics or whatever. So it's like he's got this panel of people. And yeah, like I said, it's like framed like this is the last episode that was ever filmed, and we have the footage. And so as the episode goes on, it gets more and more chaotic. And I won't give away too much, but there are some incredible practical effects in this, like kind of David Cronenberg-esque kind of gross out stuff that happens towards the end, which was just a lot of fun.
So it's like a proper horror movie, or it's a kind of comedy-ish.
Yeah, it was funny, and it was definitely like a proper horror film. Like it had some camp to it. It was fun. But also had some scary visuals that were also fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what are some other movies that you enjoyed at this film festival? Maybe some lesser known ones.
Two that really surprised me were Terrestrial Verses and Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World. Um, Do Not Expect, it's a Romanian film by Radu Jude. This movie was hypnotic. It is basically about this girl, Angela, who's sort of an intern for a major PR firm that's making a documentary about people who have been injured on the job, and trying to make a series of interviews with people who have been injured on the job to like encourage people to be safe. So it's her just kind of flying around the streets of Bucharest in her car, just like talking on the phone or like honking at people, yelling at people from her car, and getting over to try to like capture little interviews on her iPhone to then send to her boss and say like, these are the people I found. And then they decide from there which people to capture for this larger documentary that they're making. So that's like the high level, but the way that this film is structured is so chaotic and amazing. Like everything of her in the car is black and white, super grainy, very hyperactive, and she has this like split personality as she's like giving these vulgar TikToks as Andrew Tate, spouting off pro Putin propaganda. And it just looks so weird. Like because it goes from like this black and white, very like, I almost compare it to like the look of Pi, that Darren Aronofsky film, like that really
Yeah.
monochrome, like grainy black and white. And then it cuts to her like on her phone, like saying all this like insane stuff with a virtual mask of Andrew Tate on. And it's like in the vertical format, in
Yeah.
color, HD. So it's just like shifting from these different formats and resolutions. And then it also is in conversation with a wholly separate 80s movie. And it basically shifts into this, yeah, like just showing clips of this movie from the 80s of this woman driving around Bucharest as a cab driver. And it's like somehow in conversation with her and in her real life, because then like she ends up meeting the people from the movie, like not the actors, but like the characters in this 80s movie as older people.
Whoa.
And then, and then it will just smash cut to like 5 minutes of dead silence of just looking at gravestones.
Wow.
But really, it's a commentary on post-pandemic, war-torn Eastern Europe. I just loved it. I mean, it's very long. It's like almost 3 hours, but I was I was wrapped up in it, and it was one of my favorite movies I've seen overall all year.
Well,
Yeah.
it sounds like an insane trip of a movie. It's cool that
Yeah.
it leaves you satisfied with all these such contrasting kind of things it's doing.
Yeah. And to top it off, Tar's girlfriend is in it, Nina Hoss.
Oh, is she like a one of the main characters?
Yeah, she plays like the woman who's kind of running the PR firm. And there's like this great shot of her on Zoom because they're like talking to her, and she's like apparently she's talking from Chicago because she has this like Zoom backdrop of Trump Tower, and her like head is like floating in the middle of it, like very like ominously. Like the movie is so all over the place, but I loved it. I can't even really say I've seen anything like it.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time visualizing it just listening to you, but Terrestrial Verses.
Yeah. So Terrestrial Verses, this is basically a series of vignettes of people in Tehran who, in one way or the other, are being oppressed by somebody who is behind the camera. All of the vignettes are one shot, one take in a fixed shot, stagnant, unmoving, single frame shot. Like the first one is a guy who just had a baby and he's at a hospital and he's telling the hospital staff what he's going to name his kid. And he says, "We're going to name him David." And they're like, "No, no, no, you can't name him David." And he's like, "Why not? It's like a religious name." He's like, "Yeah, but not it's not Muslim. It needs to be, and they're just like questioning him for like 10 minutes and like trying to convince him to like name his kid something other than David. And the person who's like telling him what to do is behind off camera. You never see him. And so like that's one vignette and it's about 10 minutes. And then the next one is like of a little girl like in these like LED light flashing cat headphones, listening to like fun music and dancing around in a Mickey Mouse shirt. And then slowly off camera, like this woman's like saying like, try this on. And like slowly the girl is just getting like covered in like traditional garb. By the end of it, like she's like completely unrecognizable. Like all you see is just the outline of her face, in this like, like layers and layers of like religious garb. And yeah, it's a lot of different vignettes like that where you're just looking at somebody who's like slowly being kind of grilled or yeah, like hampered by like an oppressive voice off camera. And I thought they did a really good job. It's really funny and pretty bizarre. It has a very bizarre ending, but very impactful.
All right, it sounds like another crazy movie. Is there a crazier movie and to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. I would say probably the most erratic and acid trippy of a movie is People's Joker, Vera Drew's movie,
Okay.
which is semi autobiographical film about Vera Drew's life as a trans woman and her growing up in kind of a, conservative rural town. And I really wanted to talk to her because a big part of the movie is her realizing that she was trans by seeing Batman Forever, the Joel Schumacher Batman movie with Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and she says that she realized that she was trans when there's like the Batman Nicole Kidman, like when you can see like Batman's nipples.
Hmm.
And she was just saying like, she didn't understand why she wanted to be Nicole Kidman and not Batman. And so she's always had this kind of connection to Batman and the whole series as sort of like where she got her gender awakening. And so the whole film was shot during the pandemic on a green screen. And so everything is animated. All the backgrounds and like totally different styles, like hand-drawn backgrounds, 3D models. And so it's all kind of framed in this Gotham City, like New York City is Gotham City, and it's kind of her personal awakening, and she tells it in the allegory of her becoming the Joker. And like her best friend is like the Penguin, and she like starts like an alternate comedy scene where it's like Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze, and like all the villains are like improv people. And
Nice.
it's yeah, and it's kind of a love story, and it's very freaky, it's very fun, there's a lot going on. David Liebehart makes an appearance.
No Tim and Eric though.
Tim plays like the voice of like an Alex Jones character who's like always on the TV.
Nice.
And so the other thing with this movie is that DC kind of banned the film because it uses intellectual property. So I think it premiered at a festival earlier this year, and they shut it down. So I was really happy to see that it came back to the Chicago Film Festival and there was no controversy there.
So this movie probably not gonna get distributed ever, or like,
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know how it will. I think maybe it'll just go around the festival circuit for a while, but it's definitely worth checking out if you can find it.
all right, interesting, interesting.
Yep.
So are there any other lesser known movies you want to shout out before we like start talking about these big boys that you saw?
Well, Alien Island, I really liked. The movie is a documentary about Chile when it was in its military dictatorship in 1984. And during that time, there were all of these UFO sightings. And basically, like people who are like UFO hunters were receiving these messages on ham radios saying to go to this island called Friendship Island. And so that's basically the premise, but it's shot in this really cool, like very stark black and white, almost like Dave Eggers lighthouse vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Like the aesthetic is very Dave Eggers,
Black and white.
black and white. Yeah. So it mixes this, footage from the 80s with interviews with people in this black and white style, and then also recreations of what was happening to them. But some of the footage that they show from that time is like of people seeing this like light in the sky, and it was like on all the news. And so when you're watching it, you're like, were people actually like all seeing the same thing? They all kind of like witnessed, this like unidentified flying object. And basically the movie keeps you questioning, like you want to believe, to quote the X-Files, you want to believe that these are UFOs, because the alternative is this sick dictatorship convincing people to go to this island to basically like live in captivity.
Well, yeah, it's a story I've never heard anything about. Sounds
Yeah.
very bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, you have my interest peaked.
Well, Zach, you and I were able to hang out and watch a couple of these screeners together. You and I watched the comedy shorts, and I've been talking a lot here. So why don't you run down some of those comedy shorts and what you liked about those before we get into the big boys?
Okay, yeah, there's a block of comedy shorts, and I'm a comedy guy, so I was excited to watch these. Yeah, there's six of them. And the first one's called The Breakthrough, and right away I was excited by this one because it has an actor I like, Ben Sinclair, He's the weed dealer, the main guy of High Maintenance. He's in this short. I think he's a really funny actor. I love High Maintenance. Great show. Go check it out. And also Greta Lee from Past Lives is in this film. So that was cool. I haven't seen Past Lives, but I've seen Greta Lee and other stuff, so it's cool. It's like, hey, two familiar faces. They're a couple. They're in couples therapy. There's some funny fights that they have in the therapy about composting and all that stuff. And it's got a cool electronic score. Eventually, there's a bit with like a talking stick at their couples therapy, and it ends up the talking stick winds up in the therapist's eye, killing her. So they have to deal with that little mistake and trying to cover up this murder. So yeah, this is a funny short. It was enjoyable. I like that one. And next we got another movie called The Heart. And this one is not a comedy at all, in my opinion. If I was trying to be a comedy, it failed, but I did find it really sad and moving. It's just like about this like middle-aged man who lives with his elderly mother, and she ends up dying of a heart attack while he's in the shower. And a really tough scene to watch of her just like kind of like dying all alone while you like, can hear him like in the shower. And then there's like you get some scenes afterwards, like of him like after she's died. Yeah, I thought it was a really beautiful film, not a comedy. But
Hmm.
I looked it up, and guess who directed it? None other than Barack Obama's daughter, Malia.
Whoa.
Malia Obama is a film director.
No wonder it got in.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely didn't belong with the comedy shorts, but I thought it was a really nice short, and you go Malia. I want to see more from her because I like this short even though it was not a comedy. And then I saw Rizzo. This is about a little girl living in Iran, and she's very cute and charming. Um, Also not very funny, but it was a charming movie. And then you got another one called Juranos, which is a movie shot in Chile, shot on iPhone. So, it's got that super low budget feel, which I kind of liked. And yeah, this one wasn't super funny either, but I did like the vibe of it. It was like it's just like her, this like young woman and her trans friend kind of just running around the city. Like the woman like gets kicked out of her living situation, so she's trying to find a new place to live, and it's shot during COVID times, a lot of COVID masks. An interesting little short. Then we got another one called Variations on a Theme, and this is about a couple, and they just keep splitting into different versions of themselves. So like the versions of themselves are like kind of distinguished by days, and they're like talking about it like, oh, Monday's over there fucking in this room, Tuesday's having a fight. And so like they're like kind of like figuring out what to do with this like surreal situation where they just keep dividing into different versions of themselves, which was and it does kind of turn more horror. But I thought this was a really interesting premise that I feel like it could have been a cool feature. I felt like the being a short like kind of did a disservice a little bit, but it was an interesting one. And then the last one might have been my favorite one, called Making Babies, which is a French film, I'm pretty sure. And it's this about another movie about a couple. This is a married couple, and they're trying to have a kid. So there's a lot of funny sex scenes in it. Sex shot in a very unglamorous, goofy way, and they're just you see like the amount of attempts they are, of them trying to conceive a child, and it's just not working. The guy's having a hard time getting hard, and there's fighting in it. And it has some good music, as Walk On by Isaac Hayes is used a lot, which is a great song. It had some funny stuff in it. I thought it was an interesting short. I thought the premise really worked for a short film. Well, yeah, that's what I saw. That's my short comedy shorts roundup. I would say the
Yeah.
funniest was the first one, The Breakthrough, but um, some other ones are good too.
Yeah, great little batch of films there. Let's talk about some of the big marquee names now. And I will start with All of Us Strangers. So All of Us Strangers is going to be coming out around Christmas time. I really loved this movie. Definitely surprised me a lot. It's about loneliness, it's about grief, it's about trying to trying to connect with people in your present and in your past. It stars Andrew Scott, who does an amazing job, and Paul Mescal.
After Sun guy, which I didn't see, but people loved.
Yeah. Basically, Andrew Scott's character, Adam, is like a very isolated gay man who, like, in the first scene gets approached by Paul Mescal, like, kind of gets Paul Mescal's drunk and trying to seduce him. And I don't want to give too much away about this movie because it is like, I think that it affected me so well because I didn't know much going into it. Andrew Scott's character has lost his parents, and he is kind of like trying to reconnect with his family, like through his old house. And let's just say he does. He reconnects with his mom and dad, and so it's like it's kind of a ghost story, but it's also a tale of like trying to reconcile with parents where you just have a fleeting grasp of who they were. And it's just so delicately and precisely acted by Andrew Scott. Like, just, I've never seen a grown man like portray a little boy so well.
Oh,
Like, he is, probably maybe in his early 40s, late 30s, but the way that he interacts with his family, like, he just has this timid, really delicate acting style that makes him seem like a little boy. It was bursting with this yearning for a love that we've lost and can't have back, or you could have had and you chose not to accept it. And he's just constantly just like protecting his heart behind this like fragile pane of glass. I just thought it was really beautiful. Like, I was really struck by it. Definitely shed a few tears.
nice. Yeah. Andrew Scott, he's great. Mainly know him from television stuff like Fleabag and the Sherlock series, and he had a good Black Mirror episode, but it's nice to see him get a starring role on the big screen. Very
Yeah.
excited to check that out.
Yeah, it's lovely. Lovely, lovely film. Definitely think that it should get a few Oscar nods, if at least for his acting, I think. And then, yeah, saw Anatomy of a Fall. Didn't love it.
More like Anatomy of a Dud.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It just reinforces my opinion that I don't like mystery movies. I don't like who done it. Just tell me who done it. I don't care.
You're not trying to figure it out. You don't care.
I mean, I thought it was well acted. The cinematography was really nice. But yeah, I just felt like it didn't really go anywhere, and I was just kind of bored with it. Courtroom drama, save it for the little screen.
Well, I think this leaves a movie called Poor Things to talk about.
Yes, and I really don't know how much you want me to talk about this.
I mean, I've seen like a trailer for it a little, so I have some understanding of what the basic premise is. So, and I do know it stars Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo and great actors, and it seems like it has that classic strange Yorgos Lanthimos style that I love. The guy from
Yeah,
The Lobster, he directed Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I think maybe is my favorite Yorgos movie, and also The Favorite, which I think The Favorite got some Oscars, right? I feel like that was the Academy awarded some love towards that movie.
yeah, Yeah, Poor Things. Wow. I was absolutely stunned by this movie, rocketed to the top of my 2023 favorites list. Emma Stone is incredible. Mark Ruffalo is his absolute best. I have never seen Ruffalo so good. He
Wow.
is so funny and just an absolute fucking delight to watch. Um, William Defoe, of course, just incredible. God, there's so much I want to talk to you about with this movie. I can't wait for us to. We will have to have like it's our own episode on this, because there's so much to discuss. But
And there'll probably be some Oscar buzz, probably, maybe.
oh yeah, definitely. I think Emma Stone is definitely going to get nominated. It's just remarkable. The set design and the costumes, the special effects, the storytelling, the acting doesn't miss. It's really really good. It was one of these, it was a slow burn for me though because the movie is so weird that it takes a minute to kind of acclimate to the environment of the film, and I was kind of like, okay, like, is this all it's gonna be? Is just kind of weird, but it goes off into these different places and like literally has these chapters in different locations where you're really traveling all over the world and meeting all sorts of interesting characters. And Emma Stone's character has a very distinct arc that is just fabulous to watch. Can't say enough good things about it, but I will restrain myself so I don't give away too much.
Okay. Yeah, I think this movie's slated to be released December 8th of this
Mhm.
year. It was going to come out September, but I think the SAG strike pushed it back. So I have to wait a little longer to watch this. I'm very excited to see it, and hearing that you love it just makes me crazy. I want to see Poor Things. But I
Yeah.
also want to see The Boy and the Heron
Yes.
very, very badly.
Drew and I went to go see this movie together. But before we go into the interview that I already pre recorded with Drew, Zach, what's your relationship with Miyazaki and why are you so excited to see this movie, The Boy and the Heron?
I'm a big Hayao Miyazaki fan. I did name drop him on the end of our Little Mermaid episode where I told urged people to check out Ponyo, one of his great movies. But yeah, I really got into him in college. I remember me and my buddies, we did the thing called Miyazaki Mondays where we'd watch a Miyazaki movie every Monday in our dorm, and that's when I really fell in love with him. And I'm very excited about this movie because it's been 10 years since he made a movie. His last movie was The Wind Rises, which felt like a swan song. He like said he was retired. That was going to be his last film. He's threatened retirement multiple times, but that one felt like a good one to end on. But I guess a few years ago it announced that he's got another one he's cooking up, which I was very surprised by, but made me very excited. I think at that point it was called How Do You Live?
Mm-hmm.
But now we know that it's not called How Do You Live? It's called The Boy and the Heron.
I think The Boy and the Heron is just the English title. I think it is technically still How Do You Live in Japan.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I've seen the trailer for this movie, and I'm very excited. I love the visuals of it. Very much remind me of, his classics like Spirited Away and stuff like that. I love all of his movies. He's never made a bad movie. This is definitely my most anticipated movie of the year, and I'm very jealous of you and Drew that you got to see it. But I
I
think I'll be
know.
able to get to see it. Yeah, it turns out Boy and the Heron's also coming out December 8th, so it's gonna be. I mean, I'll definitely see this before Poor Things if they're both coming out the same day. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a might have to do a little Barbenheimer type thing, watch them both the same day. Who knows?
I would not suggest that. Definitely give yourself time to breathe on both of these. Um,
The Poor
yeah,
Boy and the Heron things.
uh, yeah. Well, let's listen to my interview with Drew about our experience seeing The Boy and the Heron. So, first, Drew, I just wanted you to tell us your history or your relationship with Miyazaki.
Yeah, so Miyazaki to me just was a way to see cartoons as more than just like dumb little Saturday morning things, Ren and Stimpy. He tells such great stories with like with what he wants to say, and just like being able to be see a whole movie with so many moving parts, like from almost one person's singular vision, is just like mind blowing, and
Yeah,
like with so much detail.
because he writes and directs and animates all of his films.
Yeah, Miyazaki is truly incredible, and you know, a lot of his work has always really spoke to me. Princess Mononoke, especially, which I probably tried to get you to watch maybe like 400 times in my life, like, reluctantly, but you know, I think we finally did it. You know, at the Music Box, of course, which was great, and yet seeing that in theaters was like the first time I've actually got to see Miyazaki in the theater up until just now, seeing and not his latest work, The Boy and the Heron, which was absolutely amazing. But yeah, as far as between Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, these are some of my favorite movies of all time. You know,
Hmm.
Ponyo, especially. Geez, Ponyo. Like
Hmm.
you guys are all talking about Little Mermaid the other day. I'm like, whatever, man. Get to Ponyo. You want to
Well,
talk about?
that was Zach's final thought was, yeah, Little Mermaid's good, but if you want a Little Mermaid story, Ponyo's the one.
Oh, for sure. You
Yeah.
know, so I mean, yeah. So yeah, to me, Miyazaki is just a powerful force of nature that needs to be recognized in, you know, not just the anime world, but just cinema as a whole. And like, I was always proud to carry that torch to be like, have you ever seen this movie? Like, dumb cartoon. I'm like, cha, dash your
Yeah.
opinions and standards of what things are. Anyways, love them.
Yeah, I mean, I finally felt like I saw Princess Mononoke last year when we went to the Music Box to see it, and it was incredible. We went to like a midnight showing of it,
Yeah, yeah, it was incredible.
and I've seen Spirited Away. I think we watched Spirited Away
Mhm.
during the pandemic,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
pretty much as far as my Miyazaki education gets. So that's why I was like, I can't see The Boy and the Heron before Drew does.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be cool with that at all.
Yeah.
I would have made you see it again, at least, you know. But yeah, we may end up seeing it again. Who knows?
Yeah. Drew, first tell me what this theater going experience was like for you.
Oh well, I mean, I knew this was going to be like a very empty theater with just like 10 or 20 people there that were all like writers that have been forced to watch movies for the past 2 weeks. So I
Mm-hmm.
chose to wear a full suit and
Mm-hmm.
really give the respect the man deserves. Got to walk the red carpet. No one was there.
You looked great.
But yeah, we went to the theater, saw that dude from the Sun Times. We're all just
Yeah.
like, like trying to get into the theater as it was like completely locked. And they're like, you have to ring the doorbell to the theater. So like,
Yeah, it's an AMC
silly us not knowing how to ring the doorbell to the theater,
to the AMC.
to
That
the
was like so
AMC
wild.
theater. Yeah, there wasn't, it's like, ring the doorbell, sirs. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So we walk in there and it's like super, you know, dark. Nobody's selling concessions, and it's just kind of like,
Well, it was also 9:30 in the morning.
yeah, that's a good
We
thing.
saw a 10 a.m. showing, so we got
Yeah.
there by like 9:15, 9:30.
Hmm. We get in there, find our seats. There's guys talking about you know, all the movies that are out, all the movies they're going to see, and then you know, curtain drops and we're in.
There's no curtain. And if it was the curtain, it would have rose.
Curtain drops and we're in. uh, uh, as they say. Uh,
We sat down, it was a very empty theater with only, a few people from the press there. And Yeah, movie started
Curtain
and
drops, and we're in. Yeah,
so what were your expectations?
my
Well,
expectations were really high because, like, I feel like a lot of Miyazaki's movies, like, some of them take place in the real world initially, like Spirited Away or Ponyo feels like, just like the real world. You're not sure where it is specifically, but it's somewhere like in you could believe the modern time. And but it's never era specific. So it's like this movie, I feel like is the first one that's like World War II is like mentioned. It's like you're on, some version of Earth, some like which is like kind of was like, oh man, this like makes it feel more grounded, and the beginning was especially like that because, you know, again, I'm a
well,
little concerned. Yeah.
yeah. I guess like high level, were those expectations met? Like what did this movie make you feel as you were watching it, and like how'd you walk away from it?
Well, I felt kind of like not sure where the moral was, or where, like, it just felt like there was a lot of like pulling you apart and like not like getting a clear foot, because usually his movies are kind of like, kid stories that's like clear moral, like, this guy, like, you feel people's motivations, and this one was kind of just like really spacey and out there, and it was like a lot of homages to things too, like Alice in Wonderland, and I got a lot of like seven. So it's just getting a lot of like, it's a notes is telling you his own mythos, and I know he's given a lot of like nods to things, but it's totally his own story. It was very like, okay, cool. This is like, we're like, I felt like I was like seeing a mythology told for the first time, like,
Yeah.
which was really like, whoa, this is, I'm definitely getting something here. I'm not sure what it is or but it definitely felt almost like, because there were stages in the way the movie is presented where it's like you, and it's a lot of, that's the Alice in Wonderland. She's tumbling down, he's kind of tumbling down the rabbit hole and going through like one stage of like when it starts to get a little more supernatural to the next, and kind of forced into a world which kind of feels like encapsulated like weird environments that have like a specific thing that's going on, a strife that's being happened, somebody who needs to fish, and pelicans who need to eat. Like,
Mhm.
there's like a weird conflict that's happening. It's not necessarily getting resolved, but you kind of understand what's happening in that, but you don't understand how it relates to the character, or it's just kind of all over.
Right. How do you feel about this movie in comparison to his other movies? Like, are you feeling like you were disappointed? Do you feel like you're still processing?
I feel like I'm still processing, and that his movies like Princess Mononoke have like a clear like message, which is like, respect nature, or versus this one, which is a lot about like inheritance and loss and revenge, and I don't know, there's just a lot of different things that are going on. You kind of just like, what did I just see? Like, what? It's like,
Yeah.
because it's a lot of like dreamscapes and stuff. And I know you were saying that it, like, when we came out of it, you were like, no, I was arguing that the mythology, like, it could have all been in his head, and you were
Hmm.
saying, so I kind of felt like there was something about mental illness there, because like it alluded to his mom seeing stuff, but then you were talking about like, oh no, there's the other characters in it definitely said there was weird things that happened around this specific tower.
Yeah, it's hard to like it's hard to discern. It feels supernatural because the movie is so grounded. And I think, Miyazaki is 82, and I think this is somewhat autobiographical.
Yeah, because he definitely did, like, there was that thing where he doesn't feel like he has anybody that's taking on his inheritance. Like, he doesn't know. It's a lot about legacy,
Yeah.
which kind of references him, but also like it just references so many different things, and it kind of leaves you wondering what the whole movie was about, because it's about so many different. It's like, it's about loss or accepting loss. Is it about inheritance? Is it about legacy? Is it about,
Definitely seems like he's trying to figure out what he's leaving behind as an
Mhm.
artist and as a person. And
Yeah.
in a way, maybe this is his like Fablemans, like where he's like, I mean, I don't know anything about his life, but I don't know if any of these things specifically happened to him, if he had like any loss in his family or
Well, I know that his son made a film and he criticized it pretty harshly.
film with family.
I mean, yeah, that like his son made a film and his dad said something along the lines of like, my son isn't ready for this industry, or like something pretty harsh. And
Hmm.
like me and Zach talk about it a lot because it's like, God, this guy's so nice, and like all his movies seem like so like happy, and it's just like, it sucks that he's got weird stuff with his son or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does. It does kind of feel like that in the movie, that he's just like worried about inheritance, what we're leaving our kids, and it's like, yeah, it's weird because it's like movie in World War II. His dad's making like planes and stuff for like, to fight in World War II. Like there's clearly a war going on that they're kind of pulled away from. He lost his mom. His dad remarried his aunt. He's like wrestling with that in his own way. Like he has to call his
Hmm.
aunt his mother now. And you can just see that he's like filled with like anger and discontentment and just like confused. He's just all like, for him to be like the main character, and like why the heron is like targeting him, and like why he needs to inherit this dream world, is like so confusing to me.
I mean, I'm just looking right now. The hospital fire that starts the movie, and that's not a spoiler because it's in the synopsis. It's one of the first things that happens. Basically, is he loses his mother in a fire, and then they have to move, and so the movie kind of begins with him going to this like new village, kind of settling in, and I guess that is true to Miyazaki's life because his Miyazaki's family had to evacuate from, I think, Tokyo, to the countryside during the war.
Whoa. So this is like a real regression film for him, and like really going back. That's
Yeah,
wild.
and he did lose his mother when he was young too. So
Oh wow. This is super autobiography. I didn't know that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's it's a coming of age tale, and it's his way of kind of telling his story, at the end of his life, which is very significant for somebody who's super excited for seeing this movie, who's like a big fan. What should they like go in thinking about? And then also somebody who has never seen anything, like, are there certain movies of his you think that people should watch first? I don't know.
Everyone should watch Ponyo. Everyone should feel what Ponyo does to your heart and soul, body and mind. I think that this is one of his trippiest movies, if I could say that. This is one of his.
More trippy than Spirited Away, you think?
I think so, because Spirited Away is like, oh, look at all these crazy, like, you feel like, oh, I'm a girl trapped in Ghost World. This is like, you're not sure if you're in reality or not. Like this is mind bending in a lot of ways, and I feel like that kind of puts you in a weird, just kind of like out there kind of spacey mode. I mean, I think Spirited Away is great, but I feel like I'd like, oh yeah, there's that guy, there's that. It all kind of makes sense. And like this one is like hard to kind of like digest a little bit more. I think there's more meat to it, and it kind of leaves you not feeling like you came away with a specific like, love is real, or like, some grandy, like it's just very
Or like,
like,
I want to buy, like Zach did, a Totoro costume, and
yeah.
I don't know. There aren't a lot of like, oh, this is fun. There's definitely fun aspects of it. I mean,
Mhm.
no doubt. But
Yeah.
the movie isn't like propelled by that.
No, I would say don't go into it expecting some big high moral thing, or I just say like let it happen, and
Hmm.
yeah, and kind of just accept it for what it is, because to me this is one of his better films in that it's like more philosophical and asking bigger questions, and I'm not even sure what they are, but I want to know more. I'm like, I want to just rewatch it again just so I can
Hmm.
truly get like a formed opinion on it. But I like that I'm kind of in the dark.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely gives you that feeling, which is, sometimes a bad sign, sometimes a good sign. When you see a movie for the first time and you're like, whoa, what was that?
Mhm.
It's like that's a lot to process. where you can't really say like, oh, that was good, or like
Mhm.
or like that's not really my favorite or something. Like you don't want to really say anything. You just want to be like, okay, this was like incredibly detailed. I felt
Mhm.
a lot of things, and it was a
Yeah.
lot of information made
Yeah.
over like a decade about this like master animator's like
Yeah.
deepest parts of his subconscious.
Yeah. You can't really be like, well, it didn't make me feel as happy as action sport movie. Like I'm like, I don't, yeah, I think it definitely deserves a rewatch. And I'm putting it up there. I don't know where, but I know that it's good and I know I don't know enough about it.
It's definitely a thinker, something that sticks with you. Something if you're a fan, definitely see it again. If you're not a fan, you're probably gonna walk away going like,
I don't know. I don't know what I saw.
yeah, it was like it was beautiful, and I am feeling a lot of feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that's pretty fair. I think he's more like paying homage to stories that he grew up with and like
Mm.
else. So I think that it's like a telling of his, now that you've explained that, that's, yeah, about it. I think it's a retelling of his own life and kind of like a nod to what he would do with Alice in Wonderland, what he would do in that situation.
It's very much a quest of the soul. Like I feel like this movie, um, Barbie, it's kind of Oppenheimer, Beau is Afraid. They're all these like very deep, like personal bearing of the soul, like where you're just kind of like this is me. Fablemans too. Like I feel like COVID. I mean, obviously this movie has been in the works for the last decade, but I feel like a theme that's coming out of this year is like all these directors like really went deep and
Mm,
are trying to express like what their life and their work means and like
mm.
journeys of the self.
Yeah, no, I totally buy that. That's, I definitely like, yeah, I didn't realize I was getting such an insight to me as like, but as soon as you said that, it's like, oh, this is like a retelling of his life using elements of fairy tales that he grew up with and loved and kind of implementing and putting not just his own spin on it, but like making his own mythos, like making his own, it's like this is what my interpretation of my own childhood could have been like. And this, yeah. And yeah, I think that's totally it.
It's definitely the hero's journey, spiritual quest, and a great film. So, if there's anything else you want to say?
I love this movie. I want to say I'm in love with this movie. I just need to see it a few more times before I can really put some kind of ranking in the Miyazaki world. Not that they should be ranked; they're all really good in their own
Yeah,
terms. But yeah, I think this is totally worth seeing. If you're a Miyazaki fan, you're going to have to see it, and you probably will end up seeing it.
don't miss it. But yeah, be prepared to want to see it again.
Yeah, be prepared to want to see it again, and don't go in there with any expectations of learning a lesson. I think that might have been my mistake. Is that
Well, not right away. But I mean, even I feel like just in reflecting on it with you here, like I've definitely gotten a lot more like substance out of it. And I feel like just watching it again is going to just continue to enhance that. Can
Yeah.
definitely see this being, one of those movies that people carry with them their whole lives and keep returning to. But that's kind of all of his films, magically.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, but I feel like you watch Princess Mononoke to get like some action and like a little love story and a good hearty lesson. I feel like this is not one that you're gonna like want to just watch for fun. You're gonna want to dive into it.
Yeah. Thanks, Drew. I think it was a really special and epic moment in film with family history that we got to see this advanced screening. Love you, Drew. Thank you.
Love you too, bro. Later.
That was a nice little talk. I was telling you before we started recording that I was scared to even listen to that just because I really don't want to know anything about this movie. But I think you guys did a good job of not spoiling anything. I mean, I do know I have a little bit more do have some new expectations or some new ideas percolating in my head about this movie now. It does make me frustrated that I can't watch it right now. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm like listening to that. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to watch it now, but I have to wait a little over a month now.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm frustrated too. I want to watch it again as well, because it is a lot of information to process.
Yeah, how has that been sitting with you? Is it like still percolating in your brain? You're still thinking about it a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, it's still marinating in there. I want to see it again. There's a lot of moments that I want to revisit and analyze, and I feel like it'll make for a good episode in the future.
Yeah, just based off what I heard from you guys, it does sound like this is a further exploration of some of the themes he was dealing with in The Wind Rises, which this is a movie before this. So yeah, I think you should check that one out because that one's also set in World War II, and it's much less. It's not very fantastical. There's like some dream sequences in it, but it's very grounded in reality, and but it seems very much Miyazaki kind of reckoning with his own legacy also in that movie, and also his family and some autobiographical stuff in there as well. So it feels like The Boy and the Heron is just going deeper, more
Hmm.
into the subconscious, but like
Hmm.
still kind of exploring these ideas in uh, a more trippy way, which sounds amazing to me.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned. I'm excited for you to see it. I'm excited to talk to you about it. So now we have a couple of interviews with a couple of great directors
About family,
about family.
films about family, on Film with Family.
First interview is with Haroula Rose and talking about her new feature film, All Happy Families.
Yeah, it stars Josh Radnor, and he's like kind of a struggling actor living in Chicago, looking after his brothers. Like his brother has a house, right? But his brother's a more successful actor living in LA, and he's like on a TV show where he portrays a loving, great father.
And that's played by Rob Hubel.
Yeah, the very funny Rob Hubel. And yeah, also the mother of these two brothers, played by Becky Ann Baker, is a big element of the film, and their dad. It's just a good old fashioned family dramedy, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got brings up some serious issues, but also is very light on its feet and very fun. So let's listen to our interview with Haroula Rose. So, Haroula Rose, welcome to Film with Family. Thank you so much for your time and joining us today on the pod.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and congratulations on your new film, All Happy Families.
Thank you so much. And thanks. It was so nice to meet you at the screening the other day. I'm glad that you could make it.
Yeah, it was so wild that you just like, I was literally drafting an email to your PR person and you sat down right in front of me. And I was like, this is fate. We have to do this.
Totally. I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. That was a really great talk, by the way, James Seamus, wasn't it? I thought that was
Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought he gave some really great advice, which was basically all advice is meaningless. I wanted to say first off, just I really appreciate that you set this movie in my hometown of Chicago. I felt an odd kinship to this movie and Josh Radnor's character because I grew up in Chicago. I think there's a hint that he went to DePaul. I also went to DePaul. I currently live on the north side, and I think that this movie is supposed to take place on the north side. Am I correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it's like,
I grew up too.
oh, okay. So where exactly did you grow up?
In Lincolnwood, and then I've lived everywhere from Hyde Park to Gold Coast to Old Town to Lincoln Square to, oh my gosh, yeah, it's been everywhere.
I guess my first question, you kind of answered it, was what is your connection to Chicago and what made you want to tell this story in Chicago?
Well, I just felt like it's somewhere I know very well, and it's a beautiful city, and there's a lot to offer, and I know it, and I thought, write what you know, and Kobe also lives there, my co-writer, and we both spend so much time there. I mean, he still lives there full time, and I'm there most of the time. So I mean, I come from a Greek family that's in the Midwest, and I feel that there's just a lot of Midwestern family and the charm of it and how things can feel too close for comfort that are easily translatable among many cultures and families. But in particular, I think like in the Midwest, I don't know, I just think it's a thing.
Yeah. And I'll just say I really appreciated that you made this a summer Chicago movie, because I feel like every Chicago movie out there is just depicting it as this cold wasteland. And this was like one of the first like summer Chicago movies. So I appreciated that. Um, so I guess, what was your experience filming this movie in Chicago? And it seems like a lot of your stuff was on location. And what was that like? What were some of the places that you went to? What was the experience like?
Yeah, so my first film, Once Upon a River, was also we shot in Illinois as well, but up north, like right near the Wisconsin border in Antioch and surrounding areas and all those state parks and rivers. And so there's some carryover in terms of crew, and it was comfortable and nice. And so I felt like it would be great to film in the city where I grew up as well, not just showcasing the beauty of the Midwest, which I think is often overlooked as well, but in the actual city. So a lot of places were just that I knew, places in Lincoln Square, the main two flat, that red brick 2-story building, that's our main set, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Is in Irving Park. And that was because we really needed to find a place that would let us film as if it was a TV show. Like we had to, make it feel like a home, like be feeling like a set piece and as
Mm-hmm.
its character too. So we had like some weeks of prep and then hustling that all together because it was kind of a mess. It was being sold. It had been in the same family for generations and was being sold. And the new owner let us take control of it for 2 months, which was really amazing actually. And I was joking about it at the screening. He came to the screening over the weekend that, it's one of those rare occasions where a film or a film improves its location in a way. I think he kept some of the bookcases and whatnot, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the cast of this movie. I was pleasantly surprised to see all these great actors I know from TV, like Josh Radnor from How I Met Your Mother and Rob Hubel from tons of great comedy TV shows like Arrested Development, 30 Rock, and also Becky Ann Baker from
Yeah,
Girls and
yeah.
Geeks and Geeks. I wanted to ask, like, how did you have these specific actors in mind when you were casting, or?
Well, Kobe and I wrote the script during the early days of COVID. We had outlined it, but prior to that, and then I guess that's the one benefit of the pandemic was it offered a lot of time to work on some things in writing. And while we were thinking of who to cast, we did discuss a bunch of these names. We just didn't know yet. Once the script was done, we didn't know who would say yes or who would be available. So I was pleasantly surprised when Rob read the script right away, got back to us. Josh read the script right away, and obviously he's an old friend, and that was an easy yes, and he was available, which is really cool. And Becky, we didn't know. I knew John already because we also made Once Upon a River together, so that was another repeat. There was some crew repeats and some, cast. And I was just really thrilled that we could figure it out with all their calendars and that during COVID we could make something. It was 2021, or no, wait, 2022, summer of 2022. So it wasn't like the deep, dark depths of it all, but it was still, we were still living in that reality to a certain extent, especially in film with having a compliance officer and all this stuff. But
Yeah.
cast wise, I did have those people in mind, and then it was just seeing if they were available and lining up the calendar. So we were lucky.
Nice. You said you're already friends with Josh beforehand.
Yeah, so I had a song off my first EP called Someday on How I Met Your Mother. And a friend of mine happened to be at his house and heard the song and said, "Oh, you guys should be friends." And so she introduced us and we became fast friends, that was, gosh, maybe 13 years ago or something like that.
Wow.
And so we'd always found ways to work together or look at each other's stuff musically, but we never knew that a movie could happen. So I was really happy that he said yes when this became a possibility.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah. And that segues into my next question. I thought the music is great in this movie. You use that song Empty Beach, which I love, by Coco. And there's that great performance too with Rodney Crowell, is that how you say it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Becky Ann Baker. I thought that was such a fantastic little moment. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the music in the film and your background as a musician.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been a music person, writing songs and recording and working on music for as long as I can remember. And it was always a question of whether to focus on film or music. And luckily, they very much go hand in hand, I feel like. And especially the musical piece of films, that's just my most favorite thing to work on. So there were two composers on this, and one of them is Oliver Hill, who's in Coco, and the other is Zach Ray, who's in Death Cab for Cutie and does a ton of other recordings and producing and stuff. And the songs for the film were all produced by Oliver, and so we used the Coco song, which I love, and it's just a perfect place for that song. And Rodney is a dear old friend. He also was, he was initially going to be in Once Upon a River and then couldn't. And I guess it was for the best, because that brought John Ashton into my life, and he was amazing in that role. And Rodney, we just always wanted to do something more together. He did some music for the film for River, and I just kept saying, for the life of me, I got to get you in one of my movies. And so this worked out, where he's just kind of basically being himself, and he's the best. He came up from Nashville and had previously recorded the song, so we were recording to a we were filming to a pre-recorded track, and then Becky came in and sang her vocals a few days before we shot that scene, and it was just really, it fell into place, I have to say.
That's awesome. So Becky is a musician herself, I take it too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she has an amazing voice. She, I
Awesome.
guess, she's done stuff on Broadway and off Broadway and whatnot, and just I love how that was her voice. She's just a natural singer, so it's pretty cool.
Nice. And yeah, since our podcast is called Film with Family and your movie's called All Happy Families, I think I wanted to ask about the family dynamics in this movie, and what drew you to the story, and also were there any similarities to this story to your own family?
Well, yeah, I feel like I have a lot in common with this exact family, because I think everyone loves each other very much, but obviously they have different personality types and are sometimes at odds. So it feels a little bit like, I guess I don't know, one of my mentors, a director I love, her name's Steph Lang. She said, I think this is the kind of film that everyone could relate to, because everyone has a family. So I feel like hopefully that's what you were saying, relating to Josh's character and everything like that. So I like to think that this is something that everyone could hopefully see something of themselves in, even if it's not exact. And I know the mom was definitely a composite of different women in my life, including my mom and other women I know. And so, yeah.
Nice.
So if hypothetically, if you were on this podcast for a proper episode, is there any family member that you'd like to discuss a certain film with? You could either assign it to them, or oh, my mom loves this movie and I gotta bring her on to talk about this.
I don't know. I mean, everyone in my family loves movies, but I would say that it's definitely more my thing, so I can't tell who I would ask. Maybe I would ask my siblings to come on, and we would all talk about, all three of us would have to pick a movie to talk about, because they obviously watched a ton of movies, and they're 9 and 10 years older than me. So that influenced me growing up, was seeing all the movies that they were into. If it was my dad, I feel like it would be Elia Kazan's America, America. I would probably talk to him about that one. That would probably be a heartbreaking interview. If you want to do it, I'm down.
What is it about that movie that you think would spawn a good conversation?
It's just so about his, similar experiences of being an immigrant and trying to, relate to two identities of where you come from and where you belong. And I think that carries over. I don't know if you guys are first generation, but that's definitely influenced some of my work and continues to, is how do you incorporate culture where you come from ethnically, and your new sort of home place now,
Yeah.
the next film's more about that, but
Yeah, I was wondering, is there any like release plans for this movie we're talking about, All Happy Families, or is
Funny
that still?
Chef, Funny Chefs. We just had a talk today with a sales agent who's going to help us find a distributor, and she felt really positive. So I'm feeling good, after these festival screenings and whatnot. That we'll find a really good home for it. Thinking positive in the weirdest time ever.
Well, like we said, congratulations on this movie. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to plug? Anything that we didn't ask that you wish we did?
Oh my God, I'll think of it, but I don't think so. I think it's just a really fun concept. I like this idea of film with family. That's cool. And just thinking about it, especially regarding this film, is a nice way in. So
Yeah, we couldn't pass up the opportunity. Well, Haroula Rose, thank you so much for coming on Film with Family. And when it does come out, keep a lookout for All Happy Families.
Thank you, Harula.
thank you.
Oh, that was so lovely. She is such a really nice person. And yeah, like I said in the interview, it was so cool to have met up with her by fate in real life at the festival.
But we also have another interview that we've done. We were lucky enough to talk with another filmmaker, Lucy Kerr, and she also has a movie about family with family in the title, Family Portrait. Family Portrait follows a sprawling family on a morning when they have planned a group picture. After the mother disappears and one of the daughters becomes increasingly anxious to find her and take the picture, the rest of the family appears to resist any attempt to gather. Initially presenting itself as a realistic portrayal of a family on an idle but hectic summer day, the film progressively descends into a realm where time and space lose their grip, transforming the family portrait into a solemn and enigmatic ritual of transition. So yeah, this is definitely kind of an experimental type film. It's got some incredible cinematography, just very visually interesting movie. Me and Austin were reminded of Enisman a little bit when watching this, but
Yeah, definitely.
we were pleasantly surprised when it turned out we were able to interview the director, and she was also really cool to talk to. Maybe we should listen to that right now.
Lucy Kerr, thank you so much for joining us on Film with Family. We wanted to first congratulate you on your first feature, Family Portrait.
Thank you.
So I was curious, you're from Houston, Texas, is that right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, my dad actually grew up there, just
Oh, wow.
outside in Huffman.
Hmm.
But I was just curious, what was your experience growing up in Texas, and how did it influence your art?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very Texas family. Like my mom's family is from West Texas. My grandfather had a barbecue restaurant. She was in rodeos, a very Texas family. And then my dad's family was in Houston he's was born in Houston. And I think his dad is from Houston as well. So they had been there, yeah, for a while, and also their social circle is very much people from Texas whose families have been there for a while as well. So that was a big part of my growing up, even though Houston is a very diverse city and a very big city. This kind of social circle that my parents are in, this kind of like debutante ball kind of social circle, or the kind of upper middle class, upper class, or like oil money, kind of
Hmm.
old money. Texas was very much part of like kind of the people I went to school with, and my parents' friends or parties. So there, it involved like a lot of gatherings, parties, debutante balls, country clubs, this. So a lot of kind of like performance type events where you had to perform. And I think in the South, there's this notion of like your image, like your public image to others is very important.
Hmm. Interesting.
So that was sort of my experience growing up. And then in I was a dancer, and in high school I decided to go to boarding school in Michigan. Um, and so I left Texas when I was like 14 or something for that. So that was a very formative experience. And I met people from, especially from the Midwest, but also like I met my best friend who's from Colorado, when very young age, kind of leaving Texas and getting this sort of outside perspective on it and kind of seeing what else is out there. I think at an early age that was kind of important for me to like feel kind of to start to take a kind of critical distance from that culture.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and family portrait is sort of very much yeah, I was interested in that particular type of culture where they're not like you know, stereotypical Texas that you think of, but they are very specifically Texas in a way that's more like nuanced and not and but also like kind of politically charged. Yeah, and it's about a performance, which is a performance of the family photo for Christmas card.
You set this movie right before the COVID outbreak, and throughout the movie, there's some subtle hints that people are getting sick off of camera. But can you talk about like the writing process and how COVID factored into this storyline?
Yeah, I know I wanted like I started working on the film in 2018, and I seen La Cienega by Lucretia Martel and was like very inspired by that film, which is about a family hanging out at their house, kind of like countryside house. And I actually was able to have a meeting with her when she came to Cal Arts when I was in grad school, and I showed her this footage I took of my family trying to take a picture when we're all wearing Christmas outfits, and we sort of discussed how the family picture every year is sort of this representation of a lack of conflict in the family from the year before. So if something were to disturb the card or disturb the picture taking, like that could be a narrative starting point. And I had like seeds for the idea back then, but I didn't really start writing it until 2020 when it felt like the metaphor was very strong because at that time, which I feel like a lot of us have blocked it out of our memory or kind of like blacked out during that time.
Blocked
But
out and blacked out. Yeah.
um at that time like Trump was still president and there was like a lot of denial of what was happening, the need to like continue on like as things were before and like continue presenting this kind of image of American excellence sort of, and that while like there were mass graves in New York and just kind of this denial of it, and in certain parts in the country like not even believing that was happening or not, you know, having all these conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was sort of interested in when I was that inspired me to start writing it. But I wanted to be, as the project grew on, I just wanted to be super subtle about it and make a film sort of about COVID, but really subtle because we're all tired of COVID movies, and I liked the challenge of making it in a way that was very, yeah, not straightforward.
Nice. Yeah, I was curious about like some other filmmakers or films that maybe inspired this one because yeah, there's a very unique vibe and aesthetic to this movie, which you know, I think you did a great job of establishing your voice and making a unique film. But yeah, I was curious if there were some other movies or filmmakers that kind of inspired this one.
Definitely. I was inspired by a lot of films. I like to kind of combine a lot of inspirations or languages. Like, so La Cienega's about a family and they're all sort of laying around. So it's very much kind of choreographic. So that was why I responded immediately so much to it, because it was a narrative film that really used like the mise en scène of bodies and space. And then a little bit later, I started to be more inspired by The Exterminating Angel by Louis Buñuel, which is about a group of aristocratic people that after dinner they're in this room having drinks and then they can't seem to leave the room. So that's inspired like the inability for the photo to ever happen, or that was sort of, I was thinking about that film. but it's a
Mhm.
very different film kind of. And then when the film sort of like breaks into this kind of feeling of dream world, I was inspired by this film Tropical Malady by Apichatpong Weerasethakul, which was one of his first films. And the first half is like very realistic, about a love story between two men, and then the second half, it's a lot unlike Family Portrait. It's really in two halves, and the second half is the same two actors, but in the forest, and one of them is hunting the other one. So it's sort of like, yeah, almost like the unconscious love story going on. And that inspired, I had just taught that film in my class right before going on set. And on set, I felt inspired to try these more mystical or supernatural ideas. We had long dialogue scenes, so that was a challenge for that. We didn't want to do shot reverse shot, so we did like these 2 shots and 3 shots of like multiple people in the frame. And I
Mhm.
think, and so Bellatar's film Saturn Tango was a big inspiration for just the compositions. And there's also a lot of long steady cam shots outside in that movie
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, when I was watching, I was like, oh, this must have been tricky with all the blocking of so many different actors, and there's like children involved. Like, was that a big challenge in making the film? Was trying to get these kind of shots with a bunch of people in the frame?
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of takes. Like I would usually shoot 1 or 2 scenes a day, even though we only shot for 2.5 for like 12 days of shooting. The shots are quite long, and we would do a lot of takes. So it was like a lot of repetition. And coming from theater and dance, like that's a huge, you just keep running it. So that was part of it. The children were just great performers. They were very natural, but it helped that they were also that we were all living on this property. The children weren't, but they were there all the time, and it was such a you feel like you're at summer camp or you're by the river, and you get to know they got to know each other and became good friends, and so they started to feel very natural, I think, everyone together. But yeah, I mean, almost those scenes were a bit easier for me because my background is more in choreography, and this was my first more narrative film. So the choreographic scenes, I felt like that was my kind of strength, or that was sort of more second, like I had more experience in. So, but the set, and then it's just building like a really great team because cinematographer Lydia, she knew we needed a certain kind of steady cam operator, and she knew Nick, who's a steady cam operator, and he just was amazing. And like the scenes in Sad Tango or in Jerry, which is inspired by Sad Tango, Jerry's film by Gus Van Sant, there's really long steady cam shots. So that's why we're inspired by those like that go across the property. But usually steady cam is just kind of in a like one area or like kind of in circles, so it's not as physical. But for Family Portrait, it was very physical, and Nick was just incredible, and also had just incredible intuition for how he was following Katie and then trailing off of her a little bit. And Lydia directed him to do that. So we also had a few days of rehearsal, and I definitely rehearsed these big scenes in those days because it felt, especially with the kids. I'd never worked with kids, so that was scary. But then it ended up not being so hard. But they're great kids, so.
A lot of the story is told kind of in silence and letting the imagery kind of pull you along in the story. I was curious how you worked with your cinematographer to kind of tell the story through those silent moments.
So we did a lot of research, like 8 months of research watching films. Like she would suggest a film, I would suggest a film, and every week we would watch it and then meet together and talk about it. And a lot of the time we'd break it down like a lot. And we always knew we wanted the feeling of like a suspended time. So, and I think, and though a lot changed in the process of the film, I think this feeling of stupor, like I was saying in our previous interview, that time becomes like a soup. It's like a soup of time, kind
Mm-hmm.
of, and everyone is like in this stupor together. That was something Lydia and I knew we wanted from the very beginning. So I think that's part of how, you let the images kind of build on one another to create that feeling rather than kind of trying to impose it, and the pacing, and then just being in the space. A lot of those more like silent moments or portraits of different people that came up while we were staying there in the property, because we would watch people around the property, like doing different things, like sitting by the river, or we overheard this guy or the actor saying the story about the webcam on set and wrote that down. So my friend Rob Rice worked with me as like script supervisor, but mostly as an advisor, and like helped me direct the actors and helped push me to kind of elevate the project and kind of try not to be too precious about the script, and instead, while we had access to that space 24/7, to try new things, or to think about how, yeah, we can listen to the environment and to the people in the environment to create those moments.
So you mentioned that story about the webcam. I was curious about, there's a specific story in the movie about a photograph that the father tells about like a person that was mistaken for being in the Vietnam War. I was curious if there's a story behind that, like, or if that's a real life story that you kind of adapted for the film, or what. I was just curious about that, and then also the choice to not show the photo.
Yeah, so that's a real story. That was my grandfather. So he's in a pretty famous photo, where he's laying on the stretcher in World War II. And then it happened just like that. My sister, when she was in middle school, went to the Vietnam Memorial, and there was like a T-shirt that said, "Remember those who fought in Vietnam." There was there was like a game. There were multiple things that had this picture on it, and they did Photoshop, I think, trees in it to make it look like Vietnam. So that's just a story that I used to tell a lot when I was a kid, because it's just like big part of our family, the stories we tell about ourselves, kind of. And also my dad repeats these stories over and over again, kind of. So like similar to the dad in this movie, you can tell they probably heard the story before. Yeah, that part of the writing just sort of flowed, because I wanted the dad to sort of be this kind of a Texan dad, and that he's sort of like libertarian, but also like kind of a hippie, because he likes the movie They Live, which is yeah,
Yeah.
kind of
Love that.
and and he's like kind of maybe artistic somehow, but then also maybe like then he's like an anti-vax, so it's like interesting, yeah,
Mhm.
character. So that all kind of flowed well from the Vietnam War story into They Live, into aliens and stuff. And then not showing the picture, I actually didn't even film the picture, because I just like my kind of ethos a lot of the time is like not showing something. So I had this more I guess experimental documentary I made when I was in grad school about a stunt performer, and it was about a particular stunt, and I had the stunt performer where I was actually describing the stunt that happened. It's like a 7-minute voiceover, and then showing the location near where it happened, which is like this ocean, without ever showing this stunt. And I had actually shot a stunt before that to try to put in the documentary, but then I realized that it's more powerful just describing it and not showing the violence. So that sort of, I think, has always informed my choices, that kind of ethos. And then also with Family Portrait, I just was very interested in the off screen as like a formal choice. And so having a lot of dialogue off screen, having a lot of gazes off screen, like the photo is never taken and never happens. Similar, it's off screen somewhere.
Mhm. Yeah, since the gimmick of our podcast is about family, I was curious, like, if you had some specific themes about family that you're kind of wanting to express with this film, or what you're thinking about going into it.
Yeah, it's been really interesting having my family watch the film. They were really nervous at first to watch it, which I feel bad about, but they actually really loved it. So,
Nice.
which is good. And yeah, I think like my sister said something that I think is, she's like sometimes you are just together and you have to be cleaning or you have to be taking care of the kid, or you're like someone's talking about this, or there's someone's watching and you're supposed to be all together at this, and maybe for certain tasks like the picture or something, but you just keep like missing each other, or you're
Mhm.
not. And that's okay. Like, it just doesn't mean there's something wrong with the family, or that's just life, and being in a family and being a person that's separate from other people. And so I think like what I like about the film, and how the actors really started to interact with each other and bring so much to their characters, is that there's definitely some we can sense that there's some competition or some history that makes things difficult, but there's also a lot of tenderness and love, and with the film as well, like she never finds her mother, and that, but it doesn't have to be like her mother's dead, or like people ask a lot, where's the mother, but the mother, but they end up kind of, after she's gone over, they're together on the rock, and then they become birds, and they're kind of like
Mhm.
maybe it is impossible to really connect with another person or with the family in like the way you want to for your whole life, but like that's okay. And there's this like transformation into becoming birds, or being animals, or being like a slug, or being in the water, or just kind of like creatures together.
I thought it was very believable and accurate kind of depiction of family, or it's like kind of the chaotic nature of big family gatherings. Like there's so much going on, and it can feel kind of overwhelming in its way. And I thought you did a good job of depicting that.
Yeah, I have a really big family, and I love big groups of people, probably because of that. And being in a big group, things always come up. So,
Hmm.
Yeah.
So on this podcast, we bring in family members to talk about like a movie that feels important to them. And I was wondering if like we test you with this, like of bringing one of your family members on, like who do you think would be and what would the movie be?
hmm. I guess since my dad loves They Live, so that's also in the movie.
Yes.
Obviously, I talked about it before, and I took this class about aliens. So you see, when my family saw the movie, they were like, "Wow, there's so many things."
Yeah.
That I would probably want to, in this context, talk to him about the movie, because he just loves it so much, and never really was able to kind of actually talk to him about it, because it's always amongst the chaos of family, or people being like, "Oh, Dad, stop talking about that."
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to say the movie I wanted to introduce, which is this movie I saw in Chicago, The Taste of Things, because my mom and my sister love cooking and food, and I feel like it's rare that we see those types of movies together, because they don't, we don't really go to festivals together or watch those type of movies. So yeah, I would be
Mhm.
curious to hear what they think of all the dishes in that movie.
Lastly, what's next for you? What do you have next on the docket, or is there anything you want to plug before we let you go?
Yeah, I'm in the very early development stages for my next feature. Since Family Portrait I made very quickly, I really wanted to get it out in the world. So I'm sort of in very slow progress with this one, but it's about a debutante ball in Houston. I don't want to say too much, but
Yeah.
there becomes a demonic kind of force
Yes.
amongst the ball.
Nice.
Excellent. That sounds amazing.
Um, are there any like plans for Family Portrait, like try to get it distributed, or like how are you gonna release this film? Is
Yeah, we're trying to get it distributed. It's a bit tricky because it's very kind of rare American indie, in that it's kind of oblique, but hopefully, fingers crossed, it will find a good distribution plan. And yeah, I guess in a year should probably know what the plan might be, or maybe not, maybe sooner than that, but it's going to be traveling around for the next few months at least. So yeah, for
nice.
festivals.
Is it coming to any specific festivals soon?
Yeah, it's actually going to Houston Cinema Arts Festival in November. I'm going to do a master class there as well. And then it's going to American Film Festival in Poland. It's going to Mannheim, Heidelberg in Germany.
Great. Well, if you're in Houston or Poland or Germany, check out Family Portrait by Lucy Kerr. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us on Film with Family.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun.
So yeah, that was our review of the 59th annual Chicago International Film Festival. It was so awesome to go to the movie with Drew, to see Boy and the Heron, to interview Haroula, to interview Lucy.
Maybe Film with Family will do this again the next time the Chicago Film Festival rolls around, or maybe other film festivals. This is a really cool thing we got to do.
Yeah, just want to thank everybody at the Chicago International Film Festival for helping out. And yeah, can't wait to do it again.
Stay tuned next week, where we will be covering the new Martin Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon, with my sister Jasmine and Austin's brother Drew. It's going to be a great episode. This is another huge film of the year. Sadly, must say that it will be our season finale.
Yes.
It doesn't mean Film with Family is done, but it will mean that we are going to take a break for the rest of the year after next week's episode. So mentally prepare for that.
We know it's sad, but you'll get through it.
We want to enjoy the holidays and spend it with our family. We are certain that Film with Family will return in 2024 because we love making this podcast.
And we love the movies.
And I want to thank you for sticking around and listening to this Chicago International Film Festival episode. And if you're listening, I want you to rate the podcast, give us a nice review, say how good we are at being podcast hosts. I want you to go on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Film with Family and follow us there because we're always posting fun stuff there.
Yeah. And if you'd like to send us an email, you can send us an email at filmwithfamilypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know how we did our first time as real reviewers with real press credentials.
Yeah, we're real journalists now. We're interviewing directors. But if you want to see what movies we're watching in real time, you can always follow me and Austin on Letterboxd. Austin C. Pruitt and Zachary Zweifler are our handles.
And we love the movies.
And we love our family. And we love our film festivals.